What's up, YouTube fam? Robbie C here, and today we're going to talk about a common putting myth that I think is leading to more results like that instead of results it's going to be a good one, y'all. Before we dive in, we're to ask the most important question of the day. How you doing today, Thunder? You having a good one?
So catch me if I fall.
Now, I've been offering lessons over on foundationdisc.com for almost a year now, which is kind of crazy to think about. And it is absolute joy getting to help people with their game. You can book them at Foundation Disc. We can work on backhand, forehand, but putting is, I would say, where I am most often sought out for my help. Because thanks to all the work with Mike Strauss, putting is just something that, like, I don't know how to explain it, but I like look at putting form and it's like I see putting form in black and white, and when things are like inhibiting a player from succeeding in their putt, it's just like this blast of red color jumping out from the screen saying, help me, fix me. I wish that I had it on backhand, but yeah, on putting, it seems to be there. Now, when I do these putting lessons, one of the phrases or pieces of terminology that I use most often, that I get a lot of like, yeah, those looks from, is I use the term finished position. It's our finishing position, which essentially means that we are trying to get to this position. You've heard people talk about disc golf before, that it's a very position equals position type sport. If I get my body into this coil, this position is going to eventually lead towards me getting to this position, right? One of the examples that I can use is this to demonstrate the power of finishing positions. We know that on a backhand, what you want to try to do is you want to try to have your brace and the wall hit so that this hand opens up to this point. Bang. The disc is hitting this point and accelerating and ripping out of your hand in a forward-like motion, right? My arm is sort of extended. It doesn't always have to be locked out, but it is extended to this point. Now, that is the finished position of the arm. So how would I be in a finished position? Well, that would be like me trying to keep my arm as straight as possible, never bending it, and just trying to throw the disc like this. Let me tell you, it doesn't go very far. But because we know that's the finished position, we don't always have to be in the finished position. We can get ourselves from power into the finished position, which is where the arm sort of bends and the elbow doesn't snap in half. And we come through, then even if you start in this finished long position, a twirly bird or swirly bird, it's gonna bend in at a point because, as even DT Spin Doctor would say, that spaghetti is gonna be cooked, it's gonna bend, and then it's gonna snap out towards the other side. Throwing in disc golf is a much larger, much more athletic, much more explosive motion. And because of that, our finished positions and getting into those finished positions matters significantly more, but it's also easier to see those. However, putting is so small, the details of it are so small, that we can often overlook the power of transitioning into finished positions so that we can actually generate power. Now, I've talked about it a million times in putting videos, but our three pistons of control for power are the following: the fingers, the wrist, and the legs. My ability to embrace these three things and having like a board of control that I'm adjusting and pulling the levers of these three objects is going to immediately impact my ability to gain distance and accuracy inside of my putt. So I want to talk about finished positions in each of those and how we can use the idea or the concept of finished positions and transitioning into them in order to start generating more power on your putts. Let's start with fingers, the finished position of fingers. So when I am throwing a putt, I have pretty much never seen a successful putter who finishes their putt when the disc is out of their hands, immediately out of their hands, who has their hand in this position. They have their hands in this curled or bent sort of position right here, which means that our finished position in the hand is almost always fully extended fingers out either towards the target. They can be together. I'm not too worried about the orientation of them being close or spread out. I think for lots of people, learning to do this to be the finished position is huge, and having that explosion of the fingers, the pop of the fingers. But once again, I want to make sure that we are extending those fingers. Now I know that somebody is going to start cutting some footage and doing all of this of like, oh, look here, I see Calvin Heimberg actually finishes like this, which is why I use the phrase when the putt is immediately out of their hands, like when it is released, what is their finished position? Because after the pop has occurred and the power is transferred into the shot, subconsciously your body is allowed to get as comfortable as it wants to, at least in my opinion, until you're struggling, and then you need to actively be keeping it in that finished position. Which means that if subconsciously I'm generating a ton of power and getting pop on the putt, I don't have to hold my hand in this popped position. After the pop has occurred, I can sort of let my wrist drop, I can let it do whatever it needs to do if I'm finding that I'm consistently getting the flat I'm looking for, because I have accomplished the putt earlier. So for push putters, we want to make sure that we are not locking those fingers all the way out on the disc. The index finger, you can go either way. I personally prefer to have it underneath the rim, especially for beaded putters, because that bead sort of rests in a specific spot of the finger right there. And when the finger's underneath, it actively allows all of my fingers to be helping me to generate power during the putt. But I understand that this is more comfortable for a lot of people, so you can do whatever you want with this. I just think that this is a comfort thing that actually doesn't help you throw the putter at all. Being 100% transparent, this actually involves the finger, getting you to have help with the throw. But I'd rather you have no help but be comfortable than more help and be super fixated on it and failing to putt. It is what it is. So when my fingers are locked out all the way like this, that means that when I keep doing, you see me doing this pop, this show of power, right? It becomes a lot harder if my fingers are already locked out. I'm trying to flex them, whereas just the slightest bend and suddenly I get this pop. You'll feel that pop. If you're just sitting here watching me on your phone, you can even do this. Just have your hand fully extended, curl the fingers in just a little bit, and then feel how explosive that transfer of power is. And then the more bend you get, the more you're gonna feel that sort of power. This is exactly what we're looking for. And on a spin putt, what's most often gonna happen is on a spin putt, these back fingers are gonna come closer to the rim, because this is our start, whereas when we come through and we pull the disc through on the spin putt, we're going to send the fingers forward. So this curl also helps there. So that would be my first thing, is that most often look at your putter grip, and then if your putter grip is these fingers locked all the way out, just curl them in just a little bit. Now I have really, really long fingers, so for me, because of this, I'm able to actually get creating pressure between my thumb and really putting the pressure right here. I'm able to create this push in and out because I actually have bent fingers. You can see them extending. That's happening during my throw, but I understand for lots of people, you don't have that long of fingers, so you may not be able to get this established of a push. That's totally fine. Next, let's talk wrist. So the wrist, for me, the wrist is on push putts more often sort of the forearm involving and turning the wrist than it is just straight wrist. But I think for lots of people, we want to think about what is the finished position on the wrist. The finished position on the wrist is going to be sort of opening towards the target, throwing towards the target, right? So the simple thing would be, if that's our finished position, okay, well, to transition and have power, Mr. YouTube man, like you said, let's just bend that wrist and whoop, 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 because that's about what some putts look like. Whoop, 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 whoop. For push putts, we want to make sure that supination is occurring, which is that palm turning up. I want to make sure that is the finished position that I'm achieving. So how do I create that finished spot? Well, often, most people, when they're trying to putt flat on a push putt, they're going to have the putter flat the whole time, right? So they're going to bring it flat, and then they're going to try to push it here. So if I just have this putter flat right here, what happens if I take the disc out of my hand? My palm is somewhat turned up. So if I want to create power and turn the palm further up, how much room do I have to turn it up from there? Very minimal. Now, if instead of having the putter flat, I have it on a little bit hyzer, and I think about engaging the forearm and the wrist in order to create and transition into that flat spot, notice that if I started on some hyzer and I'm thinking about driving the fingers and turning the palm upward, watch how much range of motion I have in order to generate power. That's a huge lever that I'm able to pull and push on the shot. And then when I want to create even more power, I'm going to think about either dropping that angle a bit more or twisting the hand up faster. The faster I do this, the more power I'm going to generate. the more I'm going to be able to generate pop on the putter in order to create that sort of movement. Which takes us to the hybrid between the two, which is another finishing position, which is your orientation on the wrist. And I think your orientation on the wrist is why most people aren't able to generate power by turning that wrist up like so, because they're too far front on the disc. If my putter is a clock, we have 12 o'clock at the top, we have 6 o'clock at the bottom. Where my wrist is holding the disc oriented accordingly is going to determine how the disc wants to come out. So for most people, they're holding the disc flat, and then what they're doing is they're rotating their hand to the front of the disc. So from this position right here, if I want to throw the disc forward and it wants to come out of my hand, it has to get through my hand. This would be almost the exact same thing on a backhand as rounding. It's putting and rounding, because the disc has to literally come out and around my hand, which is going to create some variance. If it comes out slow, it's going to leak early left. If it comes out too fast, it's going to leak early right or late right. So I'm having to now add, sure, I generate power because I'm going from this super bent position to that finished position of straight, but the accuracy goes out the door so fast. So also, if we think about what we talked about of this sort of turning the wrist up, if I have my wrist all the way on the front and then I'm trying to hold it on hyzer, from here I'm having to actively sort of pop the hand up while also uncurling, which is probably going to result in some, especially on longer putts, turning the disc over and having this super anhyzer putt the entire way. So for me, the finished position is my hand being completely out of the way. So I want to try to make sure that when I'm finished position on a putt is that you can see that my fingers have extended here, they've popped, and where am I located on the putter? I'm located at 6 o'clock on the putter. I've gone from the side to the back, and I'm using these fingers to send the putter forward to get that launch that I'm looking for. All right, now legs. What are my legs trying to do in the finished position, right? They're trying to have the weight transferred to the front. They're loading to the front side of the body so that the power is transferred in. If my weight is chilling back here and I'm just boop, slinging some discs, that's not necessarily a good transfer of power. Now the same thing occurs on a straddle putt, right? If I'm down here and then I fire, why did I bend my legs in the first place? So I don't want to be all the way up here to start. I want to make sure that I'm transitioning down and then feeling this power. You can feel the power sort of transfer, and then the finished position is timing that bang. That's separated, right? Like if I go down here, up, I might as well, it's the same thing as throwing from here. So I want to try to work on timing from that position. I think the legs are the most straightforward, but the legs are thinking about like how you're transferring that power. The more you embrace this idea of finished position, the more that your step putt probably becomes a lot more efficient, because you understand when the power is actually transferring during the step putt. Now, we can't have a putting video and have all of the putts just be misses that we started the video with. One of the things as you're working on this is that I didn't obviously cover every single possible variance of a finishing position, but hopefully the concept is there enough for you to understand, okay, cool, what is my putt and what is the finishing positions that I'm looking for in my putt? If I were to say the dream feeling of, okay, when my putt's on, this is what it looks like, and start from that finished position and then work your way backwards. For instance, one of the things on my personal putt that I ended up doing that cost me a ton of strokes is I'll put myself back here a little longer. Got a low ceiling here, and so often I don't commit to popping the putt and having this finished position of sending the hand from 3 o'clock on the side of the disc to 6 o'clock. So it ends up snapping, and I feel like I'm drawing it back, almost like trigger shy of whoop whoop, right? Not ready to commit all the way. So when I feel that on my putt, one of the best things I can do is stay committed to the shot. So there, I pulled the first one. The first one was fine, it was short, but second one got pulled to the right. But you know what? I focused on having, boom, committing to that extended position. That's what I want to do over and over again. If you feel like you're trying to learn these principles of a finished position, one of the best things I can do to encourage you, because oftentimes we just correlate good putts go in the basket, bad putts don't, which is just not true. There are great putts that don't go inside the basket, and there are bad putts that find their way in plenty of times. So put yourself close to the basket. Put yourself in a spot where I know, okay, cool. I want to have that 3 to 6 o'clock finish. I want to make sure that my fingers are extending out towards the basket, but I'm doing so at a short range, because what I'm letting myself build the confidence is that this dopamine release occurs when I see the putter go into the basket. So I want to make sure that in focusing on that concept, or focusing on getting to that finished position and twisting and pushing the levers of my putting power control board, dopamine release is occurring, which is going to help me cement that good habit even faster. So hopefully this one ends up on the shorter side of things, at least compared to the normal videos. Hopefully a sub 20-minute one for you, but I hope that it is helpful. It's a concept, like I said, that I end up talking about in pretty much all of my putting lessons, and I wanted to go ahead and give you guys this one for free, because I think it's so important, and I think that there are so many people out there that if you could almost self-coach yourself through your putting by just thinking about this finished position, and man, what parts of my putt am I starting in a finished position? And because of that, I am struggling to generate power, I'm struggling to generate consistency in doing it. Or am I creating weaknesses in other parts of my area, like bending the wrist, because I have to generate power somehow, and I've just been sacrificing it by starting in a finished position. So now I've built this habit of having to flick the wrist, things like that. So let me know, was there something that was helpful for you, or is there something that I glanced over or glossed over that wasn't actually like the most detailed that it needed to be, or questions that come up for this? Be looking in the comments for questions that you guys have. So thank you so much for watching. Hope you have an amazing rest of your day. Please make it fantastic for someone else too. But for now, we're gonna leave you with the birdie.